Hello, and welcome back to a brand new episode right here on the American Patriots channel. Today, we have a special episode for you, one where we talk about things a little bit differently. In the past, we've been looking a lot at the government and its role and our politicians and what they should be doing. But today, we're going to be focusing on you and I. We're going to look at the American citizen and how we're doing and what we need to be doing a little bit better. Well, let me start by asking you a question. How is America doing? How are our citizens doing today? Are we united, or does it feel like we're divided? Are we being kind to one another, or are we being selfish and disregarding the needs and feelings of other people? Well, if you ask me, I'd say, we're doing kind of a middling. Not great and not poor, but maybe somewhere in the middle. There's some good out there and there's some bad too. But then another question is, well, what is the trend? Are we getting better or worse or about the same? Seems to me that we're degrading somewhat. So it looks like there's something that we need to do here about this. We need to focus more on a sense of community, a sense of belonging to one another in a grand community called the United States of America. What we need then is a national community. So what is a national community? Well, let's take a look. A national community is a citizenry that is characterized by unity, commonality, pride, devotion, sacrifice, selflessness, service, and taking personal responsibility for the greater good. What does it feel like to be a member then of a national community? I thought about that for a while and I came up with a good example, one where our country is at war, like it was back in World War II. Basically, it was do or die. It was survive or not. Our country was in a position where if it did not win, we would have been taken over by a foreign country. Every citizen knew what was at stake, and we worked together as a unit to try to do one thing. We had one goal, which is to survive and win the war. Well, it's great to have a national community. As you saw, there's a lot of benefits and a lot of good sounding words there, but certainly we don't want to have a war in order to achieve a national community. How can we do so without having a war? How can we pull together and become more unified and better towards each other without having to have a war hanging over our heads? Well, first of all, it seems like we need to address the specific issues. If we look at the description of a national community and break it down into smaller pieces, we can address each one of those pieces. So let's start with the first two words, unity and commonality. If we look at it, it seems like someone who's different than us, we really don't accept them very well. We're usually kind of suspicious or at least standoffish. I call that tribalism. If you think way back when mankind was very primitive, we lived in tribes, groups of people. And we were always suspicious naturally of other tribes because, hey, they might be trying to steal our food or take away our territory. So we had to keep an eye on them and hold them out there at arm's length. So it seems only natural to do so. There's a good reason to be that way. And today, same thing. If we think about China or Russia, well, there's a lot of people there, but still, those are kind of like tribes. And we know that they're not always doing things in our favor. In fact, there's times when they're spying on us, they're trying to take advantage, they're trying to take territory, and so on. There's a good reason to be suspicious and standoffish when it comes to Russia and China, but not so much with our own fellow American citizens. How can we overcome this? It seems like tribalism is instinctive. It's part of our being. Well, the good news is that we're the smartest creatures on the planet. We can use our brain to figure this thing out and overcome this natural tendency to be standoffish when it comes to our fellow Americans. How do we go about this? Well, let's do an experiment. I love experiments, so let's do a test to see if differences between Americans is good or differences is a bad thing. To do this experiment, what we need to do is eliminate all the differences of each American in our entire country. So let's say that every American is just like you. And I mean by that, let's say we take you and take a lot of clones of you, and that's the only people in our entire country, you and all those clones. They look like you, they sound like you, they have all of your strengths and all of your weaknesses, they have all of your talents and all of the things that you lack talent in. What would America look like then? For one thing, the differences are all gone. We don't need to be worried about our next door neighbor because they're us. Well, there'd be a problem though, because I know if you're like me, I'm good at some things, but not so good at others. For example, singing. I'm not going to put you through the torture of listening to me sing because I'm not good at it. I just don't have a good singing voice. I don't have any talent there. If America was built with the entire population being the same person, we'd have some serious problems. Most likely, some of those people, they would not be good doctors. What would we do there if we had the entire country was not good at being a doctor, or a soldier, or a teacher, or, like I say, singer, entertainer? We'd be a weaker nation if we didn't have the diversity that we have today. Aha! We've just discovered something. All the differences of the American people, all the diversity, all of the different skills and abilities that each of us has makes us a stronger nation, makes this a better place to live. Okay, now remember that differences are a good thing when it comes to our fellow Americans. Will Rogers said this. He said, "I never met a man I didn't like." I don't know if you've heard of him or not, but that's a famous saying that's come from him. And I'd like to say, I never met an American I didn't like. That's a great way and a great outlook to view our fellow Americans. All right, so now there's one thing then. We've proven that the differences that the Americans have, the great diversity in abilities and skills and cultures and so on and so forth, is a very good thing. All right, number 2 on the list is the question, well, who are we? Where'd we come from? Is really maybe the better question. Science has proven that 13 million years ago, the human race first showed up on the planet. They were found in the eastern plains of Africa. Now, for a long time, human beings couldn't move away from there because the Sahara Desert was really vast due to the differences in climate back then. It was so vast that no one could survive a journey to cross the desert. It was too hot and it was too dry. So for many, many years, for millennia, and actually millions of years, human beings were stuck in Africa and couldn't leave. But then the climate changed, and about 70,000 years ago, as you know, we humans are pretty curious and adventurous creatures, so sure enough, we headed out across the desert and we spread out over the entire world. We went to Europe, we went to Asia, down into Australia, and even over into Alaska, and then down into the Americas. Think about it. So we all came from the same place. Oh, wait a minute. We all came from the same place. That means that we're all related. We all came from the same family, the same group that started out in the eastern plains of Africa. I consider us, I like to look at us actually as brothers and sisters. That reminds me of the fact that we are actually all related. But you might say, now wait a minute, how could that be? We really look different. There's different races, for example. There's dark-skinned races, there's light-skinned races, there's just a bunch of different races. There's Hispanics and Orientals and so on and so forth. There's no way that we could be related, right? Well, we actually are. Those differences can be explained. Peoples who lived for centuries and millennia where the sun was very bright and hot, like in the middle section of our world, their skin tended to remain dark. But then those who lived in the very northern climates, where the sun's rays were much weaker, their skin became lighter in color. So there too, we're all from the same place, and the differences in our cultures and in our languages and in our skin color and even our races is primarily due to where we came from in the world. But before we spread out into the world, we all came from one place, the eastern plains of Africa. And yep, we're all related. So now that's number two. So number one, the differences that we have in our country, that's a good thing. And number two, we're all related. And we should treat each other as such and look upon each other, not with suspicion and rejecting people, but instead accepting people. This, if we look at our community as a community of brothers and sisters where we're all related, then we can embrace diversity, which is a wonderful thing for our country. We can embrace equality. Our very Declaration of Independence says it right there. It says we are equal. Let's treat each other as equals. And we can also embrace justice for all. If we can just get over that tribalism and see the fact that the differences in our country are all good, and recognize the fact that we're all related. We're all really kind of a big happy family. All right, so now we've addressed the first two words in the description of national community. Those words were unity and commonality. So let's move on to some other words that were describing national community. And those are devotion, sacrifice, selflessness, and service. Selflessness. It seems as though we are more selfish and self-centered than selfless. Oh boy, here we go again. There's another natural tendency, or instinct you might call it, that we have here, and that is to be focused on our own self. And there again, there's a good reason for it. You've probably heard the saying, if nobody looks out for me, then who will if I don't do it myself? So there's a very good reason that we are selfish and self-centered. It's just that there again, being smart creatures of the planet here, we need to overcome some of that and not be too selfish, at least, to be good to others as well. And here's where I want to introduce a term. There's a word that I consider to be one of the most beautiful words in the English language. And it's not because the word sounds beautiful, but the meaning is beautiful. And here it is. The word is benevolence, and it means a disposition to do good in regard to others and to act with kindness, considering their needs and desires. Benevolence is embraced as a vitally important virtue in most human societies. It surely is a wonderful thing to live in a benevolent society where everyone is kind to one another. Yeah, that's where I want to live. And there's a lot of people around us that are exactly that. We live with a lot of wonderful people. You see it out there when you're driving mostly. Look around you. Do you see people allowing people to change lanes right in front of them by holding back and giving them some space? Do you see someone who needs to turn left or pull out and someone will slow down and let them do so? They're basically saying, hey, you in front of me. I'm putting you ahead of me today. But then there's some other people who are selfish out there too. They're trying to get to where they're going as fast as they can. They don't really care about creating hazards. They roll through stop signs. They cut in front of people. That's selfish. And we need to try to not behave in that way. I'm absolutely saying too that I'm not perfect. No way. I don't do everything well either. When it comes to being a good, solid member of the national community, a good citizen, I know that I have areas for improvement too. So I'm including myself in all of this today. Talking a little bit more about kindness though, kindness is really a wonderful thing. Here's a couple of great reasons. One is kindness is infectious. If you're kind to someone, it tends to spread. It's a good disease. If you're kind to someone, it makes them feel so good that they tend to want to pay it forward and be kind to someone else. Not only that, but they feel good, but the giver feels good too. There's good feelings all around. So kindness is a wonderful thing. I want to say one more thing about benevolence and service and kindness and things of that nature before I move on. And that has to do with a special breed of people that are out there living among us today. Those are the people that take selflessness, devotion, and service to the next level. Those are the ones who put their very safety and actual lives on the line to serve our communities and to serve us today. You know who I'm talking about. It's the military and the police and the fire departments and the healthcare workers that are on the front lines. I think we need to really make a special effort to thank them for their service, for what they do for us, even though they not only have a tough job to begin with, but it's dangerous as well. And in addition to thanking them, to waving at them and thumbs up, thank you very much, I think that we need to look at their pay level and as a service to them, as a tiny token of contribution to what they're doing for us, I think they all deserve a nice, healthy pay raise. A small thank you for the wonderful service that they provide for our country and for you and for me too. All right, well, moving on then to the next section, we also talked about personal responsibility towards the greater good. What is the duty of the American citizen? What is your duty and what's my duty? What should we be doing to fulfill our role as a member of the national community? It's the duty of every citizen to work to benefit themselves. Yeah, you can benefit yourself. That's part of it. Also benefit your family and your community. This includes working to complete your education, get a good education, and then either entering the workforce and contributing that way, or maintaining the home. Taking personal responsibility also includes taking responsibility for your own outcomes. Not blaming others or making excuses, but instead working hard at what you do, whether you're a student or a worker or a homemaker. Doesn't matter. You do your best. Our country will only be strong if our citizens are strong. We need to be strong, independent, and self-reliant. If the going gets tough, oh yeah, the tough get going, and that's us. if we work hard towards something and we have a failure, what do? Do we say, well, I just couldn't get the job done, or, well, they were against me and they held me back? No way. As strong American citizens, what we do is we say, okay, the going got tough, well, I'm going to get going. I'm going to work even harder. I'm going to double my efforts, and I'm going to accomplish my own goals. I am responsible for my own outcomes. That's part of a strong national community as well. John F. Kennedy said it really well when he said, ask not what your country could do for you, but ask what you could do for your country. He's talking about thinking of others, being part of a national community, serving others, and taking responsibility for doing your part in our wonderful country, the United States of America. All right, well, that's all I have for today. Next time, we're going to talk a little bit more about the strength of America. Today, we looked at national community, and yes, that is what I would consider a pillar of the strength of our country. Well, next time, we're going to talk about more on the pillars of a strong nation. You won't want to miss it. It's going to be really good. I'm sure that you'll enjoy it. I look forward to discussing the pillars of a strong nation with you on our next episode right here on the American Patriots Channel. See you then.